An arrogant UFC champion humiliates martial arts legends on live TV, calling out the greatest action hero of all time with the words, "I'll knock you out, Grandpa." The cocky fighter thinks he's picking on some washed-up movie star, mocking decades of legendary stunts as fake fighting. But what this muscle-bound bully doesn't realize is that the humble maintenance worker he just insulted is actually Jackie Chan himself. The champion has no idea he just challenged a 70-year-old master who's been breaking bones and taking names since before this punk was born. While the fighter flexes for cameras and brags about easy money, the martial arts legend quietly accepts the challenge with one deadly condition. The younger generation thinks they're about to witness an execution, but they're actually about to learn why some warriors get more dangerous with age. What happens when raw arrogance meets 40 years of perfected technique? Can the champion survive discovering that some grandpas fight back? What happened next would shatter the bully's ego for the rest of his pathetic career. Before we jump back and tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The flash of camera strobes created a chaotic symphony of light across the press conference room at the Bellagio Hotel in Las Vegas. Brock, the bulldozer, Mitchell sat behind the microphone like a king surveying his domain, his massive frame barely contained by the UFC-branded chair. At 28 years old and 265 pounds of sculpted muscle, he commanded attention simply by existing. His square jaw worked methodically on a piece of gum, while his piercing blue eyes scanned the room with predatory confidence. "Next question," Brock said, his voice carrying the casual arrogance that had made him both famous and infamous throughout the combat sports world. That a reporter in the third row raised her hand. "Brock, many fans are inspired by martial arts legends who paved the way for modern MMA. Someone like Jackie Chan, who's devoted his later years to charitable work with underprivileged youth." The gum stopped moving. Brock's expression shifted from bored confidence to something approaching disgust. He leaned forward into the microphone, his broad shoulders tensing beneath his designer athletic wear. "Jackie who?" The words dripped with contempt. "That dancing grandpa from the movies?" A few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the crowd, but Brock was just getting started. "Lady, let me educate you about something. Those aren't real fights. That's Hollywood choreography. Dancing around with furniture and ladders doesn't make you a fighter." His promoter, a thin man in an expensive suit, shifted nervously in his seat and made subtle cutting motions across his throat. But Brock was beyond control now, feeding off the shocked silence in the room. "I'd knock that fossil out in 10 seconds. Flat," he continued, his voice rising with each word. "These old-school movie fighters think they're tough because they can break some boards and jump through windows. I'd show them what real fighting looks like." The room erupted in a cacophony of shouted questions and clicking cameras. Brock stood up, his imposing frame casting shadows across the front row of reporters. His short-cropped blonde hair caught the harsh lights as he spread his arms wide. "Any of these ancient movie stars want to step up?" he bellowed over the noise. "I'll teach them the difference between Hollywood and reality. Bring your canes and your stunt doubles, because you're going to need them." His team was on their feet now, trying to usher him away from the microphone, but the damage was done. Social media notifications were already pinging throughout the room as reporters live tweeted the meltdown. The hashtag bullied grandpa began trending within minutes. Brock finally allowed himself to be led away, but not before delivering one final insult into the microphone. "Tell that Jackie Chan wannabe that the bulldozer is waiting. But he better hurry up. At his age, he might not make it to the octagon." The press conference officially ended, but the real show was just beginning. Within an hour, the video clip would have 3 million views. By morning, it would circle the globe, carrying Brock's venomous words to every corner of the internet. In living rooms and community centers, on smartphones and computers, people would watch in stunned silence as a young champion destroyed something precious, the respect that legends deserved. But in a modest community center 300 miles away, one particular viewer would see something different in those cruel words. He would see a challenge that couldn't be ignored. The morning sun cast long shadows through the windows of the East Side Community Center, illuminating dust motes that danced in the still air. In the main hallway, a figure in work clothes moved, quietly with a mop and bucket, his movements economical and purposeful. To anyone watching, he was just another maintenance worker starting his day early, baseball cap pulled low, khaki pants slightly faded from washing, work boots that had seen better days. But Jack's movements told a different story to those who knew how to look. His balance was perfect, each step deliberate. His weathered hands gripped the mop handle with the same confidence they'd once wielded nunchucks and bow staffs. At 70, Jackie Chan moved through his disguise with the fluid grace that had made him a legend, though none of the kids at the center knew who their beloved Mr. Jack really was. The sound of young voices echoed through the building as the after-school program began. Jack paused in his mopping, a slight smile creasing his lined face as he listened to their energy and excitement. These kids were his world now, their laughter more valuable than any box office record, their trust more precious than any award. "Yo, Marcus, come check this out," a voice called from the recreation room. "This is crazy." Jack's smile faded as he recognized the tone, shock mixed with anger. He abandoned his mop and moved closer to the doorway, staying just out of sight. 12-year-old Marcus Torres stood in the center of a crowd of kids, his smartphone held high as the video played. Brock Mitchell's arrogant face filled the small screen, his words carrying clearly through the room. "That dancing grandpa from the movies? I'd knock that fossil out in 10 seconds flat." The reaction was immediate and visceral. Some kids gasped. Others shouted angry responses at the phone. Marcus's face darkened with fury. "He can't say that about Jackie Chan." Marcus's voice cracked with emotion. "My dad made me watch all his movies. Jackie Chan does his own stunts. He's gotten hurt so many times doing crazy stuff that these UFC guys would never try." A girl named Rosa stepped forward, her fists clenched. "My abuela loves his movies. She says he's a real hero because he helps kids and never gives up." "It's just movies, though," said Tommy, a quiet boy who usually kept to himself. "Maybe this UFC guy is right. Maybe movie fighting isn't real fighting." The words hit the group like a physical blow. The doubt in Tommy's voice reflected something deeper, the cruel power of Brock's mockery to make children question their heroes. Jack felt something twist in his chest as he watched the kids' faces. These children lived in a world where heroes were often fictional, where good didn't always triumph, where the strong frequently picked on the weak. Jackie Chan represented something pure to them, the belief that someone could be both powerful and kind, that strength could be used to protect rather than destroy. And now Brock Mitchell had poisoned that belief with his casual cruelty. "Jackie Chan ain't just movies," Marcus said fiercely, though uncertainty flickered in his dark eyes. "He's real. He helps people. His voice trailed off as if he was trying to convince himself as much as the others. Jack stepped back from the doorway, his heart heavy. He'd spent months building trust with these kids, teaching them basic martial arts disguised as exercise and balance work. They knew him as the patient maintenance man who always had time to help with homework or settle playground disputes. They had no idea that their humble Mr. Jack was the same man being mocked on their phones. The sound of heels clicking on linoleum announced Margaret Russo's arrival. The center director's voice carried from the main office, but Jack could hear the strain in it as she spoke on the phone, likely dealing with funding issues or bureaucratic problems. Margaret carried the weight of this place on her shoulders, fighting every day to keep the doors open for kids who had nowhere else to go. As Jack returned to his mop, the kids' voices continued their heated debate. But now there was something else in their tone, a brittleness that hadn't been there before. Brock's words had planted seeds of doubt, and doubt was a cancer that could destroy a child's faith in heroes, in hope, in the very possibility that good could triumph over evil. In the distance, Jack could hear Margaret's footsteps approaching. Soon, she would see the kid's reaction to the video. Soon, she would look at him with those knowing eyes that had seen through his disguise months ago, and then decisions would have to be made. Margaret Russo's office was cramped but organized, every inch serving a purpose in the constant battle to keep the community center running. Faded motivational posters, shared wall space with children's artwork, and budget spreadsheets marked in red ink. Behind her desk, a small window looked out onto the playground where kids should have been laughing, but today the swings hung empty in the afternoon breeze. Jack sat across from her, his baseball cap resting on his knees, revealing the face that had launched 1,000 action sequences. Without the shadow of the cap's brim, There was no mistaking those gentle eyes that had twinkled through decades of films, or the weathered features that bore the scars of countless stunts performed without doubles. "I've known for 3 months," Margaret said quietly, her brown eyes studying his face. "Little things gave you away. The way you moved when you thought no one was watching. How you handled that situation with the Rodriguez boy when those older kids were bullying him. That wasn't a maintenance worker's training." Jackie, no longer hiding behind the Jack persona, managed a rueful smile. "I hoped I was more convincing." "Oh, you were convincing enough. The kids don't suspect anything. But I used to be a social worker before I took over this place. I've learned to notice things others miss." Margaret leaned forward, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "The question is, what are you going to do about that video?" Through the thin office walls, they could still hear the aftermath of the kids' discussion. The excitement had faded, replaced by a subdued atmosphere that felt wrong in a place usually bursting with youthful energy. "They're hurt," Jackie said simply. "I can see it in their faces. That man's words, they've planted doubt where there should be certainty. These children need to believe that good people exist, that heroes are real." Margaret shook her head firmly. "Jackie, those kids need you here, alive and healthy. You've been the best thing to happen to this place in years. You can't risk that for some loudmouth bully's opinion." Jackie stood and moved to the window, watching as Marcus tried to organize a game of basketball, but the other kids' hearts weren't in it. The boy's usual infectious enthusiasm was dampened, his movements lacking their normal energy. "Do you know what I see when I look at Marcus?" Jackie asked. "I see a natural leader, someone who could inspire others to be better. But today, for the first time since I've known him, I see doubt. Doubt in heroes. Doubt in the possibility that someone can be both strong and kind. That's not your responsibility to fix." Jackie turned back to face her, and Margaret saw something in his expression that made her words die in her throat. It wasn't anger or pride, it was deeper than that. It was the look of a man who had spent his entire life protecting others, who couldn't stand by while something precious was destroyed. "6 months ago, when I started volunteering here, Marcus asked me why the good guys always win in movies but not in real life," Jackie said. "I told him that sometimes they do, but we have to be patient and believe. How can I tell him that now if I don't believe it myself?" Margaret stood as well, moving around her desk to face him directly. "This isn't about belief, Jackie. This is about some overgrown child with too much muscle and not enough brain. Ignore him. Let it blow over." "He called me a dancing grandpa," Jackie said with a slight chuckle that held no humor. "Dancing? As if everything I've ever done was just performance. Wasn't it? The movies, I mean." Jackie was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. The stories were fiction. The characters were created. But the dedication, the training, the willingness to get hurt to entertain others, that was real. The message that you should protect those who can't protect themselves, that was real. And now this man wants to call it all fake, all worthless. Through the window, they watched as Marcus finally gave up on the basketball game and sat alone. On a bench, his phone in his hands. Probably watching that damned video again, letting those poisonous words eat away at something pure. "Sometimes, Margaret," Jackie said softly, "an old tree must weather one more storm to protect the saplings growing beneath it." Margaret felt her resolve cracking as she saw the pain in his eyes, not for himself, but for the children whose faith had been shaken. She'd run this center for 5 years, had seen Jackie work miracles with kids who'd given up on everything. He'd never asked for recognition, never wanted credit. He just showed up every day, mopped floors, fixed broken equipment, and somehow made every child feel like they mattered. "If you're really going to do this," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "then we need to make it count. Not just for your pride, but for them." Jackie nodded, understanding flowing between them without words. This wasn't about two fighters settling a dispute. This was about showing children that heroes could be real, that good could triumph, that believing in something better wasn't naive, it was necessary. "Set up a press conference," Jackie said, replacing his cap and becoming humble Mr. Jack once more. "It's time." The Hotel California's conference room buzzed with barely controlled chaos as reporters crammed into a space meant for half their number. Cell phones captured every angle while cameramen jockeyed for position, their equipment creating a maze of cables and tripods. The hastily arranged press conference had drawn media from across the country, all hungry for the story that social media couldn't stop talking about. Jackie sat at the simple table facing the crowd, looking remarkably calm in his modest button-down shirt and dark slacks. No entourage surrounded him, no publicists whispered instructions in his ear. Just Margaret Russo standing quietly by the wall, and the weight of the world's attention focused on a 70-year-old man who'd chosen to speak truth to arrogance. "Mr. Chan," shouted a reporter from CNN, "are you seriously considering accepting Brock Mitchell's challenge? You're 70 years old, and he's a professional fighter in his prime." Jackie leaned forward slightly, his voice carrying easily through the room despite its gentle tone. "Age is just a number. Character, however, that lasts forever." "But realistically," pressed another journalist, "what chance would you have against someone like Mitchell? He's 42 years younger and outweighs you by almost 100 pounds. A slight smile played at the corners of Jackie's mouth. "I have been hit by trucks, helicopters, and falling buildings. I think I can handle one young man with attitude problems." The room rippled with surprised laughter, but Jackie's expression grew serious again. "However," he continued, "I will not fight for spectacle or to feed anyone's bloodlust. If this fight happens, it will serve a purpose greater than settling a dispute between two men." He paused, letting the silence build as cameras clicked and phones recorded. "Mr. Mitchell wants to prove his strength? Then let him prove it by helping those who need strength most. All proceeds from this fight, every dollar, will go to youth programs across America. Children who need to believe that heroes exist, that good people fight for something more than money or glory." A reporter from ESPN leaned forward. "Are you saying Mitchell profits from bullying behavior?" "I'm saying that true strength protects the weak," Jackie replied simply. "If Mr. Mitchell truly believes he is stronger than me, then he should have no problem using that strength for something meaningful." The questions came faster now, voices overlapping in their eagerness. "What about safety concerns? Have you been training? When would this hypothetical fight take place?" Jackie raised a hand, and the room gradually quieted. "I am not a young man pretending to be something I am not. I know my limitations, but I also know that some things are worth fighting for, regardless of the personal cost." In Las Vegas, 300 miles away, Brock Mitchell watched the live stream from his penthouse suite. His massive frame sprawled across a leather couch that probably cost more than most people's cars. His promoter, Danny Kellerman, paced nervously while speaking rapid fire into his phone. "He's actually doing it," Brock muttered, though whether with admiration or disbelief was unclear. "The fight makes financial sense," Kellerman said, covering his phone's mouthpiece. "The publicity alone would be worth millions. And let's be honest, you'd destroy him in under a minute. Easy money, massive exposure, and you come out looking like you gave the old man his shot." Brock stood and walked to his floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the glittering Vegas Strip. Below, tourists gambled away their savings while convinced they couldn't lose. Maybe that's all this was, an old man making one last desperate bet. 3 weeks, he said suddenly. "Madison Square Garden. Tell them I accept." Back in Los Angeles, Margaret watched Jackie's face as the news alert appeared on someone's phone. The fight was official. In 21 days, the man who'd spent months quietly mopping floors and teaching children about respect would step into a cage with someone who could literally break him in half. "Are you sure about this?" she whispered during a brief lull-in. Questions. Jackie's response was so quiet only she could hear it. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." The final question came from a young reporter in the back. "Mr. Chan, what do you say to people who think this is just a publicity stunt?" Jackie stood slowly, his dignity intact despite the chaos surrounding him. "I say that children are watching. They are always watching. And what they see today will shape what they believe about tomorrow. If they see an old man too afraid to stand up for what is right, they learn that heroism has an expiration date. If they see someone willing to risk everything for others, they learn that true strength never fades." He paused at the door, turning back one final time. "In 3 weeks, we will all learn which lesson they need to hear." The afternoon fog rolled through San Francisco's Chinatown like a gray blanket, muffling the sounds of traffic and conversation. Jackie climbed the narrow stairs to Danny Wong's apartment, each step echoing in the dimly lit hallway. The building, showed its age: peeling paint, worn carpets, the faint smell of cooking oil and incense that seemed to permeate everything. Danny's door was slightly ajar, and Jackie could hear the soft murmur of a television inside. He knocked gently before entering, finding his oldest friend sitting in a threadbare recliner, a cup of tea cooling on the table beside him. "Jackie," Danny said, his voice carrying surprise and warmth despite its weakness. "I saw the news." "You magnificent fool." The two men embraced carefully, and Jackie was shocked by how frail Danny felt in his arms. The man who had once coordinated death-defying stunts now seemed fragile as paper, his once powerful frame diminished by months of treatment. "You look terrible," Jackie said with the brutal honesty that only comes between lifelong friends. Danny laughed, a sound that turned into a cough. "Cancer has a way of redecorating your appearance. Please sit." Tea. As Danny moved slowly to prepare another cup, Jackie noticed the pill bottles lined up on the kitchen counter like soldiers of pharmacies, worth of medications with names he couldn't pronounce. Bills were stacked nearby, some marked with red "Final Notice" stamps. "Danny," Jackie began carefully, "how are you managing? I mean, financially." His friend's hand stilled over the tea service. For a moment, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic filtering through thin walls. "Insurance company found a loophole," Danny said finally. "Apparently, stunt work qualifies as a high-risk occupation that voids certain coverages. 20 years of premiums, and they dropped me when I actually needed them." Jackie felt something cold settle in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me? What would you have done? Thrown money at the problem?" Danny returned with the tea, his movements careful and deliberate. "I've been taking care of myself for 65 years. I wasn't about to start being anyone's charity case. It's not charity between friends, isn't it?" Danny sat heavily, wincing slightly. "Jackie, I've watched you your entire career. You've given everything to everyone: your body, your time, your money. You've broken bones for strangers' entertainment and donated millions to causes you believed in. When do you get to rest?" Jackie sipped his tea, tasting the bitterness beneath the traditional herbs. Through Danny's small window, he could see children playing in the courtyard below, their laughter a stark contrast to the weight of the conversation. "The fight purse," Jackie said quietly. "If I win, there will be enough money to cover your treatment. The best doctors, the newest procedures." Danny's eyes filled with tears he was too proud to shed. "You can't risk your life for my mistakes. They're not mistakes. They're consequences of a system that fails good people." Jackie set down his cup and gripped his friend's hand. "Some battles choose us, old friend. This one chose me the moment that young man decided to mock everything we've spent our lives building." Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing glimpses of blue sky. Danny squeezed Jackie's hand with what strength remained in his fingers. "Then I suppose we'd better make sure you're ready." The contrast between the two training camps was like comparing a symphony to a sledgehammer. In Las Vegas, Brock Mitchell's preparation took place in a gleaming facility that looked more like a space station than a gym. Monitors tracked his heart rate, computers analyzed his movements, and a team of specialists studied every aspect of his physical condition with scientific precision. "Leg kick power is up 12%, announced his sports scientist, a thin man with clipboard and stopwatch. "Recovery time between rounds has improved by 8 seconds. Brock pounded the heavy bag with mechanical fury, each strike thundering through the gym like cannon fire. His training was relentless and brutal. 5 hours of technical work, 2 hours of strength training, an hour of film study, watching Jackie's old movies with the sound turned off. "Look at this choreographed nonsense," he told his team, pausing a scene where Jackie fought 6 opponents with a ladder. "No real fighter moves like that. It's all dancing and wire work." His striking coach, a former UFC veteran named Rex Burton, nodded agreement. "Chan's got no ground game, no wrestling background. You take him down once, it's over. Hell, you probably don't even need to take him down. Just walk forward and throw leather." Meanwhile, 300 miles south, Jackie's preparation couldn't have been more different. At dawn each morning, he practiced Tai Chi in Griffith Park, his movements flowing like water as joggers passed by without recognizing the legend in their midst. His training was ancient and holistic: meditation for mental clarity, balance exercises on unstable surfaces, and weapons work with whatever objects he could find. Your opponent is young and strong, said Eddie Ramirez, the grizzled boxing trainer who'd volunteered his services after seeing Jackie's press conference. But strong isn't the same as smart, and young sure as hell isn't the same as experienced. Eddie held focus, mitts while Jackie worked combinations. The older man's strikes precise rather than powerful, each technique building on the last like links in a chain. He'll come hard in the first round, Eddie continued. All these young fighters want the highlight reel knockout. Let him punch himself tired, then show him what 40 years of experience looks like. Between training sessions, Jackie maintained his routine at the community center. The kids watched him work now with new eyes, whispering excitedly when they thought he couldn't hear. Marcus had appointed himself unofficial bodyguard, following Jackie around and asking endless questions about fighting techniques. Mr. Jack, I mean Mr. Chan, Marcus said one afternoon, aren't you scared? Jackie paused in his floor mopping, considering the question seriously. Fear is like fire, Marcus. It can burn you, or it can keep you warm and help you see in the dark. The trick is learning to control it instead of letting it control you. Online, the betting odds reflected the obvious physical disparity. Vegas had Jackie at 20-1 against, with some sportsbooks refusing to take action entirely. Social media buzzed with predictions ranging from concerned to cruel, while younger fans mocked the old man's delusion and older supporters prayed for a miracle. But in small pockets of the internet, something else was growing. Hashtag Team Jackie began trending among martial arts communities, shared by people who remembered when heroes stood for something more than self-promotion. Videos surfaced of Jackie's real-life heroics, saving a drowning child, stopping a purse snatcher, quietly donating millions to disaster relief. As the days counted down, both fighters prepared in their own ways. Brock's team analyzed data and optimized performance metrics. Jackie's smaller group focused on heart, wisdom, and the kind of preparation that couldn't be measured by machines. The question wasn't who was stronger or faster. The question was whether courage and character could overcome youth and arrogance when everything was on the line. The media assault began like a carefully orchestrated military campaign. Every morning brought new headlines questioning Jackie's sanity, his health, and his right to step into a cage with a man less than half his age. Sports commentators debated whether athletic commissions should even allow the fight, while medical experts appeared on talk shows to discuss the catastrophic brain injuries that could result from such a mismatch. This isn't David versus Goliath, declared Dr. Patricia Williams on ESPN's morning show. This is David versus a tank. Jackie Chan is 70 years old. His reflexes, his bone density, his ability to absorb punishment, everything has declined. This fight could literally kill him. Brock played his part perfectly, appearing on every major network with his trademark cocky grin and quotable soundbites. On The Tonight Show, he demonstrated his reach advantage using a yardstick, showing how he could hit Jackie from distances where the older man couldn't even touch him. Look, I respect what Jackie did in movies, Brock told the host, his tone dripping with false sincerity. But there's a difference between choreographed fights and real violence. When I hit him, and I will hit him, there won't be any director yelling cut to reset the scene. The psychological warfare extended beyond television. Brock's team leaked medical records from Jackie's stunt injuries, highlighting every broken bone and concussion from his film career. They hired private investigators to dig up unflattering photos and rumors, painting a picture of a delusional has been desperately clinging to faded glory at the East Side Community Center. The negativity was taking its toll. Jackie found the kids huddled around tablets and phones, their faces reflecting the doubt being planted by talking heads and internet trolls. Maybe you shouldn't fight him, Rosa whispered during one of their afternoon sessions. Everyone says you're going to get really hurt. Tommy, the quiet boy who'd first expressed doubt, looked up from his homework with worried eyes. My dad says real fighting isn't like movies. He says you might die. Jackie knelt down to their level, gathering the children around him in a circle. Their faces showed the confusion of young minds trying to reconcile their love for their hero, with the chorus of voices telling them their hero was about to be destroyed. Do you remember the story I told you about the bamboo tree? Jackie asked gently. Marcus nodded eagerly. It bends in the storm, but doesn't break because it's flexible. Exactly. Now, what do you think happens to the big oak tree that refuses to bend? It breaks, Rosa said quietly. People are saying I'm too old, too small, too weak, Jackie continued. Maybe they're right about some things. I am older than my opponent. I am smaller. But they're forgetting something important. They're forgetting about heart. He placed his hand over his chest, then reached out to touch each child's heart in turn. The strongest muscle in your body isn't in your arms or legs. It's here. And this muscle gets stronger with age, not weaker. It gets stronger every time you stand up for someone who can't stand up for themselves. Every time you choose to do what's right instead of what's easy. That evening, Margaret found Jackie in the center's small office, reading comments on social media. The cruel words glowed on the screen. Put the old man in a nursing home. This is elder abuse. Jackie, Sean is about to learn what real fighting looks like. You're torturing yourself, Margaret said, closing the laptop. I'm preparing myself, Jackie replied. These words, they're designed to plant seeds of doubt. But doubt only grows if you water it with fear. Outside, they could hear the night janitor starting his rounds. Life at the center continued its rhythm. Despite the approaching storm, children would arrive tomorrow needing guidance, needing someone to believe in. That responsibility weighed heavier than any punch Brock Mitchell could throw. Jackie's phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Saw the morning shows. Don't let the vultures get in your head. Remember what Bruce Lee said, be like water. Jackie smiled, typing back, water is patient. Water is persistent. And eventually, water wears down even the hardest stone. The countdown continued, each day bringing fresh attacks on Jackie's credibility and new predictions of his doom. But in the quiet moments between storms, something else was building, a quiet certainty that some fights transcended physical advantage, and some warriors grew stronger when everything seemed stacked against them. Madison Square Garden loomed against the New York skyline like a modern coliseum, its iconic marquee announcing the fight that had captured the world's attention. 24 hours before the opening bell, the venue buzzed with activity as crews worked around the clock to transform the arena into a combat sports cathedral. Jackie stood at the window of his modest hotel room, watching the controlled chaos below. Delivery trucks brought in equipment while security personnel established perimeters. Somewhere in that maze of preparation, people were betting millions of dollars on whether an old man's heart could overcome a young man's fists. That a soft knock interrupted his meditation. Margaret entered, followed by an unexpected group, 6 children from the community center, their eyes wide with the wonder of their first trip to New York City. We couldn't let you face this alone, Margaret said simply. Marcus stepped forward, clutching a handmade poster that read, Mr. Jack equals real hero, in crayon letters. We saved up our allowances for plane tickets. Well, most of it. Margaret helped. With the rest, Jackie felt his throat tighten as he knelt to their level. These children had traveled 3,000 miles to support him, using money that should have gone to candy and toys. Their faith in him was simultaneously humbling and terrifying. Are you scared? Rosa asked, echoing Marcus's question from weeks earlier. Yes, Jackie admitted. But fear isn't the opposite of courage. Courage is being afraid and doing what's right anyway. Across the city, Brock Mitchell's preparation resembled a rock star's pre-concert ritual. His penthouse suite at the Four Seasons overflowed with his entourage, trainers, publicists, hangers-on, and beautiful women whose interest correlated directly with his bank account balance. Champagne flowed while a DJ spun music that vibrated through the expensive furniture. Tomorrow night, you make history, his promoter Danny Kellerman announced over the noise. Biggest pay-per-view numbers in UFC history. The old man's celebrity brought eyeballs, but your fists are going to keep them watching. Brock barely listened. His attention focused on his phone, where social media notifications praised his inevitable victory. The betting odds had moved even further in his favor. Some books now refuse to take action on Jackie lasting more than 1 round. Just remember, his striking coach Rex Burton said, pulling Brock aside, don't get cute. Don't play with him. Put him down quick and clean. The last thing we need is him getting lucky with some movie nonsense. Meanwhile, at a small gym in Queens, Eddie Ramirez worked Jackie through final preparations on ancient equipment that creaked with each movement. The contrast with Brock's high-tech facility couldn't have been starker. This place smelled of sweat and dreams deferred, where fighters came not for glory but for the simple hope of proving they belonged. Your reach disadvantage is 7 inches, Eddie said, holding focus mitts. But reach don't mean nothing if he can't hit what he's aiming at. Make him miss, make him pay, make him doubt himself. Danny Wong arrived during the session, having checked himself out of the hospital against his doctor's explicit orders. He looked friendlier than ever, but his eyes burned with the fierce loyalty that had defined their friendship for 4 decades. "You shouldn't be here," Jackie said, embracing his friend carefully. "Where else would I be?" Danny replied, "We started this journey together. We finish it together." As night fell over the city, both fighters completed their final preparations. In vastly different ways, Brock partied until the early hours, confident that youth and strength would carry him to easy victory. Jackie meditated in silence, finding peace in the knowledge that tomorrow's fight would be about more than 2 men settling a dispute. The weigh-in earlier that day had confirmed what everyone already knew. Brock at 265 pounds of muscle and swagger. Jackie at 170 pounds of quiet determination. The size difference had drawn gasps from the crowd, but Jackie had simply smiled and bowed respectfully to his opponent. "Any last words, Grandpa?" Brock had taunted during their final face-off. "Just one," Jackie had replied calmly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me why I fight." Now, as dawn approached over Manhattan, both men prepared for sleep in their own ways. Brock crashed into unconsciousness aided by alcohol and arrogance. Jackie lay peacefully, his dreams filled not with violence, but with the faces of children who needed to believe that heroes could be real. Tomorrow would bring answers to questions the world had been asking for weeks. But tonight belonged to preparation, meditation, and the quiet certainty that some battles transcend the physical realm entirely. The roar of 20,000 voices crashed over Madison Square Garden like a tidal wave as the fighters made their entrances. The historic venue had witnessed countless legendary battles, but tonight felt different. Electric with anticipation and weighted with significance that transcended sport. Jackie's entrance music began, an orchestral remix of Kung Fu Fighting that somehow managed to be both playful and dignified. He walked calmly through the tunnel, flanked by Margaret, Eddie, and Danny, who leaned heavily on a walking stick but refused to miss this moment. The crowd's reaction was mixed, respectful applause from older fans, uncertain murmurs from younger ones who'd come expecting a spectacle. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, fighting out of Los Angeles, California, weighing 170 pounds, the legendary Jackie Chan. Jackie bowed to all 4 sides of the octagon, acknowledging both cheers and boos with equal grace. His simple black shorts and red gloves looked almost modest under the harsh arena lights, but his movements carried the fluid confidence of someone who'd spent 7 decades perfecting his craft. The building shook as Brock's entrance began. Pyrotechnics exploded while heavy metal music assaulted the eardrums. The champion strutted down the ramp like a conquering emperor, his 265-pound frame glistening with oil and arrogance. Designer shorts, custom gloves, and a cocky grin that promised violence. And his opponent, fighting out of Las Vegas, Nevada, weighing 265 pounds, the reigning and defending UFC heavyweight champion, Brock, the Bulldozer Mitchell. The younger demographic erupted in approval while Brock flexed and posed, playing to the cameras with practiced showmanship. He shadowboxed aggressively, each punch thrown with enough force to knock out lesser men. In Jackie's corner, Eddie made final adjustments to his gloves while Margaret whispered words of encouragement. Danny gripped the cage, his knuckles white with tension and hope. "Remember," Eddie said urgently, "he's going to come fast and hard. Circle away from his power hand. Make him chase you. Make him work. And remember why you're here," Margaret added, nodding toward the section where the community center kids sat with homemade signs, their faces glowing with absolute faith in their hero. The referee called both fighters to the center for final instructions. Up close, the size difference was staggering. Brock towered over Jackie like a skyscraper next to a cottage. The champion's massive hands dwarfed Jackie's weathered ones as they touched gloves, but something flickered in Brock's eyes when he looked down at his opponent. Not fear exactly, but perhaps the first whisper of uncertainty. "I'm gonna end this quick, old man," Brock muttered through his mouthguard. "Stay down when I drop you." Jackie simply nodded, his expression serene. "We shall see." The referee stepped back, raising his hand as the crowd fell into expectant silence. 20,000 people held their breath. Millions more watched around the world, waiting to see whether youth would triumph over experience, strength over wisdom, arrogance over humility. "Fighters ready," the referee called. Both men assumed their stances, Brock crouched and aggressive, Jackie balanced and patient. "Fight!" The bell rang, and the storm began. Brock exploded across the octagon like a bull charging a matador, his massive frame covering the distance in 3 thundering strides. His game plan was brutally simple: overwhelming aggression to end the fight, before Jackie could settle into any rhythm. The first overhand right whistled past Jackie's head with enough force to decapitate a statue, the wind from its passage ruffling the older man's hair. Jackie circled away from the cage wall, his footwork economical and precise. He'd seen this before: young fighters who believed power alone could overcome decades of experience. But as Brock pressed forward, throwing bombs with reckless abandon, one glancing shot found its mark. The right hand caught Jackie high on the temple, not clean but hard enough to stagger him. The crowd gasped as he stumbled backward, his usually perfect balance momentarily compromised. Brock smelled blood and swarmed forward, unleashing a barrage of punches that would have overwhelmed most professional fighters. "Finish him!" Someone screamed from the crowd. Jackie covered up defensively, absorbing shots on his arms and shoulders while Brock hammered away with increasing fury. A left hook slipped through his guard, snapping his head to the side. An uppercut grazed his chin, lifting him slightly off his feet to eye in the community center kids section. Rosa covered her eyes while Marcus gripped his homemade sign so tightly his knuckles turned white. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Their hero was supposed to be invincible, not getting beaten up by some muscle-bound bully. With 30 seconds left in the round, Brock landed his cleanest shot, a perfectly timed right cross that caught Jackie flush on the jaw. The impact echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Jackie's legs buckled, and he crashed to the canvas hard, his body bouncing slightly from the force. The referee jumped in, beginning his count as Brock celebrated prematurely, flexing for the cameras and shouting triumphantly at the crowd. 1, 2, 3. Jackie lay motionless for a moment, his vision blurred and ears ringing. In his corner, Eddie was already climbing through the ropes, ready to stop the fight if his fighter couldn't continue. Margaret stood frozen, watching her friend struggle to comprehend where he was. 4, 5, 6. Slowly, Jackie rolled to his side, then pushed himself up to one knee. His left eye was already beginning to swell, and a trickle of blood ran from his nose. But his eyes were clear and calculating. 7, 8. Jackie rose to his feet, nodding to the referee that he could continue. As the official checked his responses, Jackie's gaze found Brock across the octagon. The younger man was still celebrating, but something in Jackie's expression made him pause mid-flex. The referee stepped back. "Fight!" Brock charged again, eager to finish what he'd started, but this time Jackie was ready. He slipped the first punch, sidestepped the second, and as Brock threw a wild haymaker, Jackie countered with a precise shot to the body that made the champion grunt in surprise. The round ended with Brock having clearly won, but something had shifted in those final seconds. As Jackie walked to his corner, he caught Eddie's eye and did something that made his trainer's heart skip a beat. He winked. "You okay, champ?" Eddie asked, applying ice to Jackie's swelling face. "He telegraphs his right cross," Jackie said calmly, as if he hadn't just been dropped by that very punch. "Drops his left hand when he gets excited. Breathes heavy through his mouth when he's tired." Eddie stared at his fighter in amazement. "You were studying him while he was beating on you." "Sometimes," Jackie said, watching Brock celebrate in the opposite corner. "The best way to learn your opponent's patterns is to let him show you everything he has." Margaret leaned close, her voice urgent with concern. "Jackie, you can't take much more punishment like that." My brain is fine," Jackie interrupted gently. "But his ego is about to become a problem. For him." The horn sounded for round 2, and both fighters rose from their stools. Brock looked confident, expecting an easy finish. Jackie looked different. Not beaten, not discouraged, but like a chess master who'd just figured out his opponent's strategy. The second round began with Brock's confidence at an all-time high. He dropped the legendary Jackie Chan with one punch, exactly as he'd predicted to his team, the media, and anyone who would listen. The old man was tough, he'd give him that, but toughness only delayed the inevitable. Brock stalked forward. Again, but this time Jackie was ready. As the champion threw his signature right cross, the same punch that had floored him moments earlier, Jackie wasn't there. He slipped to the outside, letting Brock's momentum carry him forward, then countered with a lightning-fast combination to the body. The crowd stirred with interest as Jackie began implementing his strategy. Instead of meeting force with force, he used Brock's aggression against him. When the younger man charged, Jackie moved like water, flowing around the attacks and striking from unexpected angles. "What the hell is he doing?" Brock muttered, growing frustrated as his sure-thing victory became elusive. Jackie's movement was mesmerizing. Every step had purpose. Every defensive action flowed seamlessly into a counterattack. Years of choreographing fight scenes had taught him to think 3 moves ahead, and decades of real martial arts training had given him the tools to execute his vision. Brock threw a massive overhand right that would have decapitated most opponents. But Jackie ducked under it and swept the champion's front leg. For the first time in his professional career, Brock Mitchell hit the canvas, not from a punch, but from perfect technique applied at exactly the right moment. Madison Square Garden erupted. The impossible was happening before their eyes. Brock scrambled to his feet, his face flushed with embarrassment and rage. "Lucky shot, old man." But it wasn't luck, and everyone watching could see it. Jackie was systematically dismantling his opponent's crude aggression with 40 years of refined technique. When Brock tried to clinch and use his size advantage, Jackie escaped with an eel-like slip that left the champion grasping air. In a moment that would be replayed millions of times on social media, Brock attempted a takedown against the cage. Jackie ran up the octagon wall like he was defying gravity itself, flipping over his opponent's back and landing gracefully behind him. The crowd came unglued as 20,000 people witnessed something they'd only seen in movies. "Holy shit," Marcus screamed, forgetting he was in public as he watched his hero perform the impossible. Eddie was beside himself in the corner. "That's my boy. That's how you do it." Even Brock's own corner was stunned into silence. Their overwhelming physical specimen was being outclassed by a man who could be his grandfather. Rex Burton frantically scribbled notes on his clipboard, trying to find weaknesses in Jackie's flowing defense. The round progressed with Jackie gaining confidence and Brock losing composure. Every exchange demonstrated the difference between a brawler and a martial artist. Brock's punches, while powerful, followed predictable patterns. Jackie's responses were jazz improvisation, creative, unexpected, and devastatingly effective. With 1 minute left in the round, Jackie landed his cleanest combination yet, a 3-punch sequence that snapped Brock's head back and drew a roar from the crowd. For the first time, uncertainty crept into the champion's eyes. But between rounds, something sinister was occurring that no one in the crowd could see. In Brock's corner, his cutman was busy with more than just applying Vaseline and ice. A small envelope changed hands between him and someone in an expensive suit at ringside. The same envelope Margaret had noticed but couldn't prove contained anything improper. The referee for this fight was veteran official Mike Patterson, a man who'd overseen hundreds of professional bouts with impeccable integrity. But as he prepared for round 3, his behavior began to show subtle but concerning changes. His positioning favored Brock slightly. His warnings came quicker for Jackie's creative techniques. "Something's not right," Margaret whispered to Eddie as they watched the official's body language. "Yeah," Eddie agreed grimly. "But we can't prove anything. We just have to adapt." As the horn sounded for round 3, Jackie had clearly won round 2. The momentum was shifting, the crowd was behind him, and Brock's aura of invincibility was cracking. But in combat sports, momentum could change with a single moment, and not all moments were determined fairly. The real fight was just beginning. Round 3 opened with a different energy entirely. Brock, having been embarrassed in the previous round, came out more measured but determined to reassert his dominance. Jackie continued his patient approach, but within 30 seconds, The dynamics of the fight shifted dramatically. Jackie attempted a perfectly legal trip, a technique that had worked beautifully moments earlier. But referee Mike Patterson immediately stepped between the fighters, wagging his finger disapprovingly. "No, keep it standing," Patterson barked, though the move violated no rules and had been executed with textbook precision. Jackie looked puzzled but nodded respectfully. In the crowd, experienced martial artists and fight fans began murmuring their confusion. That technique was not only legal but fundamental to mixed martial arts. As the round progressed, the officiating became increasingly one-sided. When Brock grabbed the cage to avoid another takedown, a clear rule violation, Patterson said nothing. When Jackie used creative angles to escape a clinch, the referee immediately separated them, claiming lack of action despite the obvious technical excellence being displayed. "This is bullshit," Eddie roared from the corner, his weathered face red with indignation. "That ref's got money on this fight." Margaret watched the obvious bias with growing anger. She'd seen corruption in many forms during her social work career, but watching it play out against Jackie, a man who'd never asked for anything but the chance to do right, made her blood boil. The crowd was beginning to notice too. Chants of fair fight, echoed through sections of Madison Square Garden as fans witnessed the blatant favoritism. But Patterson continued his biased officiating, creating an environment where Brock fought under different rules than his opponent. Despite the corruption, Jackie adapted with characteristic grace. If ground techniques were being penalized, he'd rely more heavily on striking. If clinch work was being broken up prematurely, he'd create distance and box. Every adjustment showcased his incredible fight IQ and decades of experience. Midway through the round, Jackie landed a beautiful combination that staggered Brock backward. The champion was clearly hurt, his legs unsteady and his guard dropping. Jackie moved in for the finish, landing clean shots that would have ended most fights. But as Brock stumbled toward the cage, clearly dazed, Patterson inexplicably stepped between the fighters again. "Break! Break!" he shouted, though no clinch existed and Jackie was in perfect position to capitalize on his advantage. The pause allowed Brock to recover, shaking his head clear and regaining his composure. What should have been a fight-ending sequence became merely another moment of controversy in the crowd. Retired boxing referee Johnny Martinez stood up in disgust. "I've seen bad officiating, but this is criminal," he shouted, his voice carrying through his section despite arena security trying to quiet him. Athletic Commission officials seated at ringside began taking notes, their faces grim as they witnessed the obvious bias. Phone cameras captured every questionable call, already being uploaded to social media, where fight fans were expressing their outrage in real time. Jackie found himself fighting two opponents, Brock's raw power and Patterson's corrupt officiating. But rather than becoming frustrated, he used the adversity as fuel. Every biased call seemed to make him more determined, more focused. "You see this?" he said to Eddie between rounds, nodding toward the referee. "This is what those kids face every day. Systems that aren't fair, people in power who don't care about right and wrong. This is why we fight." Eddie wiped blood from a small cut over Jackie's eye, his hands shaking with anger rather than nerves. "We're gonna beat them both, champ, the bully and the cheat." As round 4 began, something had changed in Jackie's demeanor. The patient teacher was still there, but now there was steel beneath the silk. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting against every corrupt system that had ever favored the strong over the righteous. The crowd sensed it too. Despite the obvious bias, despite the size disadvantage, despite everything stacked against him, Jackie Chan was not backing down. He was teaching the world a lesson about character under pressure. And in the community center kids section, Marcus held his sign higher and screamed louder, knowing that heroes didn't just win. They showed you how to fight when everything seemed impossible. Round 4 transformed Madison Square Garden into something approaching religious experience as Jackie unleashed the full spectrum of his martial arts mastery. The patient teacher disappeared, replaced by 40 years of refined technique flowing like water, finding its perfect path. That Jackie's movement became hypnotic. His signature, drunken master, style confusing Brock's conventional approach completely. He swayed and bobbed unpredictably, making the Champion's powerful strikes missed by inches while countering with precision shots that accumulated damage like interest on a loan. What the hell is he doing? Brock gasped to his corner between exchanges, his usual confidence replaced by frustrated bewilderment. Jackie's techniques defied everything Brock had been taught about fighting. Traditional martial arts patterns blended seamlessly with practical applications, spinning kicks that actually worked, unorthodox angles that created openings where none should exist. Every movement told a story of decades spent perfecting the impossible. The crowd rose to their feet as Jackie demonstrated why he'd become a legend. A perfectly timed sweep sent Brock tumbling again. An improvised combination using the cage wall as a springboard left spectators gasping. When Brock tried to corner him, Jackie flowed around the attack like smoke, appearing behind his opponent with movements that seemed to bend the laws of physics. "This is unbelievable," shouted the television commentator. "I've never seen anything like this in professional mixed martial arts." Even through the corrupt officiating, Jackie's artistry was undeniable. When Patterson tried to interrupt his flow with unnecessary breaks, Jackie simply smiled and reset, showing the patience of a master who understood that true technique couldn't be stopped by bias. Brock's frustration mounted with each failed attack. His coaches had prepared him for an old man's desperation, not this fluid poetry in motion. Every punch he threw seemed to hit air, while Jackie's counters found their mark with surgical precision. "Stop dancing around," Brock roared, throwing a wild haymaker that Jackie ducked under so smoothly he appeared to be bowing. The retaliation was swift and beautiful, a five-punch combination that showcased every major martial art Jackie had mastered. Boxing jabs, karate strikes, kung fu open-hand techniques, and finishing with a Muay Thai knee that left Brock staggered against the cage. In the community center kids section, the children were on their feet screaming with joy. This was the Jackie Chan they knew from movies, but real and happening right before their eyes. Marcus jumped so high with excitement that security had to catch him before he fell into the row below. "That's our teacher," Rosa screamed, tears of joy streaming down her face. "That's Mr. Jack." The round ended with Jackie clearly dominant, his techniques having solved every puzzle Brock's team had presented. As he walked to his corner, there was something different in his bearing, not arrogance, but the quiet confidence of a master craftsman who just demonstrated why mastery took decades to achieve. Eddie met him with ice and amazement. "I've been around fighters my whole life, and I ain't never seen nothing like that. You're putting on a clinic out there. The real lesson is just beginning," Jackie replied calmly, his eyes finding Brock's corner where increasingly desperate. Conversations were taking place. In the opposing corner, Rex Burton was frantically revising strategy while Brock's promoter made urgent phone calls. Their unstoppable force had met an immovable object wrapped in silk and wisdom. Between rounds 4 and 5, Brock's corner became a hub of desperate activity. Danny Kellerman pulled Rex Burton aside, while the cutman worked on Brock's increasingly battered face, their conversation hushed but urgent. "This isn't going according to plan," Kellerman hissed. "The old man is making our boy look like an amateur. We need to change the dynamic." Rex nodded grimly, pulling out a small water bottle with an unmarked label. "Time for Plan B. This'll even the playing field." The substance looked like ordinary sports drink, but it contained a cocktail of stimulants designed to enhance performance while avoiding detection in post-fight testing. It was illegal, dangerous, and exactly the kind of shortcut that separated champions from cheaters. "Drink this," Rex commanded, handing Brock the bottle. "All of it. Right now." Brock, his pride wounded and his confidence shattered, didn't ask questions. He drained the bottle in 3 gulps, the bitter aftertaste masked by artificial flavoring. Within minutes, his pupils dilated slightly and his heart rate increased beyond what could be explained by exertion alone. Meanwhile, Jackie sat calmly in his corner as Eddie worked on a small cut above his left eye. Despite dominating the previous round, he seemed more concerned about his opponent than celebrating his success. "Something's not right over there," Jackie observed, watching the suspicious activity in Brock's corner. Too much panic for a team that should trust their fighters' natural abilities. Margaret leaned close to the cage. "Whatever they're doing, be careful. Desperate people do dangerous things." The warning proved prophetic as round 5 began. Brock, exploded from his corner with unnatural energy, his movements sharper and more aggressive than anything he'd shown earlier. The stimulants had transformed him into something beyond his normal capabilities. Faster, stronger, seemingly immune to fatigue. Jackie immediately sensed the change. Brock's punches carried different energy. His combinations flowed with enhanced coordination. Most tellingly, his pain tolerance seemed dramatically increased. Shots that had staggered him before now barely registered. He's been enhanced, Jackie realized, his decades of experience allowing him to recognize artificial performance when he saw it. The chemically boosted Brock pressed his advantage ruthlessly. Enhanced reflexes allowed him to cut off Jackie's escape routes while increased power made every landed shot more dangerous. Jackie found himself in serious trouble for the first time since round one. A vicious uppercut snapped Jackie's head back, opening a cut on his chin. A follow-up combination drove him against the cage where enhanced Brock hammered away with machine-like precision. The crowd's cheers turned to worried murmurs as their hero absorbed punishment that accumulated with frightening speed. "Cover up. Weather the storm," Eddie shouted from the corner, but even he could see this was different from normal fighting. Jackie's defensive mastery kept him upright, but the enhanced aggression was overwhelming even his decades of experience. Brock seemed tireless, his enhanced cardiovascular system allowing him to maintain a pace that should have been impossible this deep. Into the fight by round's end, Jackie was bloodied and breathing heavily for the first time. His left eye was swelling shut while blood trickled from multiple cuts. The stimulants had accomplished their intended purpose, turning a tactical chess match into a one-sided beating. In his corner, Eddie applied ice with hands that trembled, with concern rather than nerves. "Talk to me, champ. How you feeling?" "Like I'm fighting a machine instead of a man," Jackie replied honestly. "But machines break when you understand their programming." Margaret watched the opposing corner where Brock was receiving another mysterious drink, his team's behavior growing more suspicious with each passing moment. She pulled out her phone, beginning to document what she was witnessing. "We need to expose this," she whispered to Eddie. "First, we need to survive it," Eddie replied grimly, watching as Jackie's body showed the effects of fighting an artificially enhanced opponent. The horn sounded for round 6, and Brock rose with that same unnatural energy. But in Jackie's corner, something else was rising. The quiet determination of a man who'd faced impossible odds before and found ways to overcome them through intelligence, patience, and unshakable character. The real test was just beginning. Round 6 began with enhanced Brock attacking like a man possessed, his artificially boosted system operating at levels that defied natural human capability. Every punch carried devastating power while his enhanced cardiovascular system allowed him to maintain a relentless pace that would have broken normal fighters. Jackie found himself in the most dangerous situation of his 70-year life. The flowing artistry that had dominated earlier rounds became desperate survival as Brock's chemically enhanced assault overwhelmed even his legendary defensive skills. A thunderous right hand caught him flush on the temple, sending him stumbling across the octagon like a drunk. "Stay with me, Jackie," Eddie screamed from the corner, his voice barely audible over the crowd's horrified gasps. Enhanced Brock showed no mercy, stalking his wounded opponent with predatory efficiency. A vicious left hook opened a gash over Jackie's right eye, blood streaming down his face like tears. An uppercut lifted him off his feet momentarily before a follow-up combination drove him into the cage wall with bone-jarring impact. In the community center kids section, Rosa began crying openly while Marcus clutched his homemade sign so tightly his knuckles went white. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. Heroes weren't supposed to bleed this much, weren't supposed to look this helpless against the villain's assault. "Make it stop," Tommy whispered, his young mind struggling to process the violence being inflicted on someone he'd grown to love. "Please make it stop." Margaret watched in horror as Jackie absorbed punishment that would have hospitalized most men half his age. His movements became increasingly labored, his usually perfect balance compromised by the accumulating damage. The enhancement drugs had turned Brock into something inhuman, a fighting machine programmed only for destruction. By the round's midpoint, Jackie's vision was blurred and his legs unsteady. Enhanced Brock sensed victory and poured on the pressure, unleashing combinations that would have ended most fights. Only Jackie's incredible heart and decades of conditioning kept him upright as the artificial enhancement took its toll. "End it," someone screamed from the crowd. "Stop the fight." But Jackie refused to fall. Even as enhanced Brock battered him from pillar to post, something unbreakable inside the legend refused to surrender. Every time he seemed ready to collapse, he found reserves of strength that amazed even his own corner. With 30 seconds left in the round, Brock landed his most devastating combination yet, a four-punch sequence that left Jackie clinging to consciousness by sheer willpower alone. Blood poured from multiple cuts while his left eye swelled completely shut. The horn mercifully ended round 6, and Jackie stumbled to his corner on unsteady legs. Eddie immediately went to work with ice and gauze, trying to stem the bleeding. While assessing the damage, "How many fingers?" Eddie asked, holding up his hand. "Enough to count the ways I'm going to make him pay for cheating," Jackie replied through swollen lips, his spirit intact despite his battered condition. Margaret leaned close, her voice urgent with concern. "Jackie, this isn't natural. No one fights like that without help. Your brain, your body, you can't take much more of this." "My body is temporary," Jackie said quietly, wincing as Eddie worked on his cuts. "But what this fight represents is permanent. Those children are watching. They need to see that good doesn't quit, even when everything seems hopeless." In the opposing corner, Brock was receiving another dose of enhancement, his team's illegal operation now completely out in the open. But the stimulants were taking their toll on him too. His pupils were fully dilated, his breathing erratic, his movements beginning to show the twitchy side effects of chemical enhancement. "One more round like that, and we've got him," Rex Burton told his artificially enhanced fighter. "Just keep the pressure on." But as round 7 approached, something had changed in Jackie's demeanor. The beating had been severe, but it had also revealed something important. Enhanced or not, Brock was still predictable, still human beneath the chemical boost. And Jackie Chan had spent a lifetime turning impossible situations into opportunities for triumph. Round 7 opened with what appeared to be Jackie's final stand. His face was a mask of blood and swelling. His movements labored from 6 rounds of punishment that would have hospitalized most professional fighters. Enhanced Brock stalked him with mechanical precision, the stimulants driving him forward with inhuman persistence. The first exchange seemed to confirm everyone's worst fears. Brock landed a crushing right hand that sent Jackie staggering backward, his legs barely keeping him upright. The enhanced champion pressed his advantage, unleashing a barrage of shots that painted the octagon canvas with Jackie's blood. "This is hard to watch," the television commentator said grimly. "Jackie Chan is showing incredible heart, but there's only so much punishment the human body can absorb." In the crowd, Danny Wong gripped his walking stick with white knuckles, watching his oldest friend endure a beating that seemed to grow worse with each passing second. The stimulants had turned Brock into something beyond normal human capability, a relentless machine programmed for destruction. Enhanced Brock backed Jackie against the cage and unloaded with both hands, each shot carrying the artificial power of chemical enhancement. Jackie's defensive skills kept him conscious, but barely. Blood streamed from multiple cuts while his breathing became increasingly labored. "Stay down when I drop you, old man," Brock snarled through his mouthguard, the stimulants making him more aggressive and less rational with each passing moment. But as Brock wound up for what looked like a fight-ending combination, something unexpected happened. Jackie seemed to stumble, his legs giving out as he collapsed to the canvas. The crowd gasped as their hero went down, apparently finished by the enhanced assault. Brock raised his arms in premature celebration while referee Patterson began his count. 1, 2, 3. Enhanced by stimulants and drunk on apparent victory, Brock turned to the cameras, flexing and shouting triumphantly. I told you all. This is what happens when you mess with the bulldozer." 4, 5, 6. Jackie lay motionless on the canvas, his chest rising and falling with labored breathing. In his corner, Eddie was already climbing through the ropes, ready to throw in the towel if his fighter couldn't continue. 7, 8. But something in Jackie's eyes suggested this wasn't the end. They remained clear and calculating even as his body appeared broken. The master strategist had one final lesson to teach, one last card to play against an opponent who'd abandoned honor for artificial advantage. 9. Jackie stirred, rolling to his side as the count reached its critical moment. The crowd held its breath as he pushed himself up to one knee, then slowly rose to his feet. Blood streamed down his face, but his eyes burned with unquenchable fire. Patterson checked his responses, and Jackie nodded that he could continue. But as the referee stepped back to restart the action, Jackie did something that would be replayed millions of times on social media. That he smiled. Not a grin of false bravado or desperate hope, but the knowing smile of a chess master who'd just realized his opponent's fatal mistake. Enhanced Brock had shown him everything, every pattern, every tendency, every weakness that the stimulants couldn't hide. "What's he smiling about?" Brock muttered, his enhanced aggression suddenly tempered by uncertainty. As the fight resumed, Jackie moved differently. Despite his injuries, despite the blood obscuring his vision, despite facing an artificially enhanced opponent, something fundamental had shifted. The student was about to become the teacher, and the lesson was about to begin. But first, one final moment of apparent defeat was necessary to set up the ultimate victory. As Brock charged forward for the finish, Jackie seemed to collapse again, this time staying down as the referee began another count. The crowd watched in stunned silence as their hero lay motionless, apparently conquered by chemical enhancement and corruption. But in the chaos of the moment, no one noticed the small recording device Jackie had activated with his mouthguard, a device that had been capturing every illegal enhancement and corrupt decision for the past 3 rounds. The real fight was just beginning. The medical team rushed into the octagon as Jackie lay motionless on the canvas, their equipment creating a barrier around the fallen legend. To the 20,000 spectators and millions watching worldwide, this appeared to be the tragic end of an impossible dream. An old man's courage finally overcome by youth, chemistry, and corruption. But beneath the chaos of apparent defeat, something extraordinary was unfolding. As paramedics checked Jackie's vital signs, he whispered something that made the lead physician's eyes widen in surprise. Not words of pain or confusion, but clear, calculated instructions that revealed the depth of his preparation for this moment. "The mouthguard," Jackie murmured, his voice barely audible above the crowd's concerned murmur. "Recording device. Everything's been captured." Dr. Sarah Chun, the event's chief medical officer, had been treating combat sports injuries for 15 years. She'd seen fighters broken by lesser punishment than Jackie had endured, but his eyes remained sharp and focused despite the blood and swelling. "You switched mouthguards before the fight," she realized, her training in both medicine and technology allowing her to understand immediately. "You've been recording the entire time." Jackie's slight nod confirmed what she'd suspected. The medical examination became something else entirely, a covert debriefing that would change the course of combat sports history. Meanwhile, Brock celebrated at his post-fight press conference, his enhanced system still flooding his bloodstream with artificial confidence. The stimulants made him more talkative than usual, bragging about his dominance while his team tried unsuccessfully to moderate his drug-fueled boasting. "I told everyone I'd knock out that dancing grandpa," Brock declared to the assembled media. "Real fighting isn't choreographed nonsense. It's about who's stronger, who's younger, who's willing to do whatever it takes to win." His final phrase would prove prophetic in ways he couldn't imagine. Dr. Chun worked quickly, using her medical authority to clear the octagon while Jackie's examination continued. Athletic Commission officials Dr. Marcus Webb and Linda Rodriguez were discreetly contacted, their expertise in anti-doping procedures making them ideal allies for what was about to unfold. "The recording will show everything," Jackie explained quietly as Dr. Chin documented his injuries for the official record. The illegal substance administration between rounds 5 and 6. The referee's bribery before round 3. All of it. Within minutes, commission officials were reviewing crystal-clear audio and video evidence of the most comprehensive cheating scandal in modern combat sports. Brock's corner man could be heard discussing dosages, money changing hands with. Corrupt referee Patterson was captured in perfect detail. "This is enough to overturn the result and file criminal charges," Dr. Webb said grimly. "But more than that, we can restart the fight under proper supervision." Jackie's apparent medical crisis had bought them the time needed to expose the corruption completely. As Brock continued his victory lap in the press room, commission officials were already drafting emergency orders that would shock the sporting world. "Are you certain you want to continue?" Dr. Chen asked, her medical training conflicting with her admiration for Jackie's courage. "Those children are still watching," Jackie replied simply. "They need to see that justice exists, that cheaters don't win, that good can triumph when given a fair chance." The apparent defeat was about to become the most spectacular comeback in sports history, but first, justice needed to be served publicly and completely. The post-fight press conference erupted into chaos as athletic commission officials stormed into the room with drug testing equipment and legal documentation. Brock's victory celebration died mid-sentence as Dr. Marcus Webb approached the podium with grim determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dr. Webb announced over the confused murmur of reporters, "we have credible evidence of systematic rule violations. During tonight's contest, Mr. Mitchell, you are required to submit to immediate enhanced drug testing." Brock's enhanced system was still flooding his bloodstream with stimulants, making his pupils dilated and his behavior erratic. "What the hell are you talking about? I won fair and square." "The recording evidence suggests otherwise," Dr. Webb replied, signaling to commission investigators who began setting up testing equipment on the spot. Rex Burton tried to intervene, but Linda Rodriguez was ready with a court order obtained through emergency judicial proceedings. "Mr. Burton, you're also required to submit to questioning regarding substance administration during the contest." The room exploded with camera flashes and shouted questions as reporters realized they were witnessing the biggest scandal in combat sports history. Brock's promoter Danny Kellerman attempted damage control, but the evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. The enhanced drug test results came back within 30 minutes, positive for amphetamines, synthetic testosterone, and 2 other banned stimulants. Brock's levels were so elevated that commission doctors expressed concern for his immediate health. "This is impossible," Brock protested, though his dilated pupils and twitchy behavior told a different story. "Someone's setting me up. The recording device captured your corner administering substances between rounds," Dr. Webb explained. "We have video evidence of you consuming illegal performance enhancers and audio of your team discussing dosages." Simultaneously, referee Mike Patterson was being escorted from the building in handcuffs, the evidence of his bribery too clear to dispute. His bank records showed payments from Brock's promotional company dating back 6 months. Back in the medical facility, Jackie was cleared by doctors who marveled at his condition. Despite the apparent beating, his injuries were primarily superficial, cuts and bruises that looked worse than they were. His decades of stunt work had taught him how to absorb punishment while protecting vital areas. "The fight result is overturned to a no contest," Dr. Webb announced to the stunned press room. However, given the exceptional circumstances and the fact that Mr. Chan was competing against artificially enhanced opposition, the commission is prepared to offer an immediate rematch under proper supervision. Brock's team tried to refuse, but contractual obligations and legal pressure left them no choice. The scandal had exploded across social media, with hashtag #JusticeForJackie trending worldwide as fans demanded the fight continue under fair conditions. "Same night, right now," Dr. Webb declared. "New referee, enhanced supervision, and Mr. Mitchell will compete without artificial assistance." The crowd, which had been filing out in disappointment, began returning to their seats as word spread that the fight would continue. In the community center kids section, Marcus clutched his poster with renewed hope while Rosa wiped away tears of joy. "I can't believe it," Margaret whispered to Eddie as they prepared to return to Jackie's corner. "He planned all of this. The man's been 3 steps ahead since the beginning," Eddie replied with admiration. "Now we get to see what happens when it's a fair fight." As both fighters prepared for their second encounter, the dynamic had shifted completely. Brock, stripped of his chemical advantages and facing legal consequences, would have to rely on natural ability alone. Jackie, vindicated by justice and supported by truth, was ready to show the world what authentic martial arts could accomplish against honest competition. The real fight was about to begin. Madison Square Garden erupted as both fighters returned to the octagon for their unprecedented rematch. The venue, which had been half empty during the scandal revelations, now buzzed with electricity as 20,000 fans witnessed something that had never happened in professional combat sports. Justice being served in real time. Jackie entered. First, his cuts cleaned and bandaged by medical staff, but his spirit visibly renewed. The crowd's reception was thunderous, a mixture of admiration for his courage and outrage at the injustice he'd endured. The community center kids screamed, themselves hoarse as their hero walked calmly to the center of the octagon. Brock's entrance told a different story. Stripped of his chemical enhancements and facing criminal charges, the former champion looked smaller somehow. His usual swagger was replaced by nervous energy as he faced the prospect of fighting fairly for the first time in months. The new referee, veteran official Amanda Rodriguez, no relation to the commission's Linda Rodriguez, gathered both fighters for instructions that carried unusual weight given the evening's events. Gentlemen, the world is watching. This fight will be conducted with absolute fairness and transparency. Any violation will result in immediate disqualification and additional legal consequences. As they touched gloves, the contrast was striking. Jackie's eyes held quiet confidence while Brock's showed uncertainty. Without chemical enhancement, he was simply a very good fighter facing a legend who'd been waiting 70 years for this moment. The restart bell rang, and everything changed. Jackie immediately demonstrated the difference between fighting an enhanced opponent and facing honest competition. His techniques, which had seemed desperate survival tactics before, now became surgical instruments of destruction. Every movement flowed with purpose as 40 years of martial arts mastery unleashed against a fair opponent. Brock charged forward with his usual aggression, but without stimulants boosting his reflexes and power. Jackie was ready. He slipped. The first punch, redirected the second, encountered with a combination that snapped Brock's head back and drew gasps from the crowd. Now this is more like it, Eddie shouted from the corner. Watching his fighter operate at full capacity for the first time all evening, Jackie's movement became hypnotic. Every prop fighting technique from his movies adapted for real combat. He used the octagon walls as springboards, turned Brock's momentum against him, and demonstrated why decades of experience trumped youthful power when the playing field was leveled. A spectacular sequence saw Jackie duck under a wild swing, sweep Brock's legs, and as the champion fell, catch him with an uppercut that lifted him completely off his feet. The crowd went insane as they witnessed something impossible, a 70-year-old man making a professional fighter look like an amateur. Holy shit, Marcus screamed again, his grandmother having given up trying to moderate his language. That's our teacher. Brock struggled to find answers for Jackie's flowing style. Every technique he'd been taught seemed inadequate against someone who moved like water and struck like lightning. His team's scouting reports had prepared him for an old man's desperation, not this masterclass in applied martial arts. Jackie landed a perfect combination that sent Brock stumbling backward, his nose streaming blood. For the first time in his professional career, the champion looked genuinely hurt and confused. What's happening to me? Brock gasped, his natural abilities seeming inadequate after months of chemical enhancement. But Jackie wasn't interested in destroying his opponent. He was interested in teaching him. As the round progressed, something remarkable happened. Jackie began demonstrating techniques while explaining them, turning the fight into the world's most violent educational seminar. Use your strength with wisdom, not anger, Jackie advised. During a clinch, showing Brock how to properly position his body for maximum leverage, the transformation was visible to everyone watching. This wasn't just a fight. It was a masterclass in both martial arts and character. The philosophical battle became as compelling as the physical one as Jackie continued his unprecedented approach, defeating his opponent while simultaneously educating him. Every exchange demonstrated the difference between a fighter and a martial artist, between someone who used violence and someone who understood it. Feel the flow, don't fight against it, Jackie instructed during a beautiful sequence, where he redirected Brock's charging attack into a perfectly executed throw. The crowd watched in amazement as their hero turned the octagon into his personal dojo. Brock, stripped of artificial advantages and facing authentic technique for the first time, began responding to Jackie's guidance. His movements, usually crude and powerful, started showing subtle improvements under his opponent's in-fight instruction. I don't understand, Brock said during a brief clinch, his voice carrying genuine confusion. Why are you helping me while we're fighting? Because defeating you teaches you nothing, Jackie replied, landing a precise shot to the body that made his point literally and figuratively. But helping you become better serves everyone. The crowd witnessed something unprecedented in professional combat sports, a fight becoming a lesson in real time. Jackie's strikes were delivered with the patience of a teacher correcting a student's form. Each technique and instruction in both martial arts and charactered in Brock's corner. His remaining team members watched helplessly as their fighter transformed. Under Jackie's influence, Rex Burton tried to shout instructions, but Brock was no longer listening to the voices that had led him to chemical enhancement and corruption. "This is impossible," Rex muttered, watching his meal ticket develop a conscience during active competition. Meanwhile, Jackie's corner marveled at the display of mastery they were witnessing. Eddie had trained fighters for 30 years, but he'd never seen someone use combat as a teaching tool at the highest levels of professional sport. "He's not just beating him," Margaret observed with tears in her eyes. "He's saving him." The community center kids were beside themselves with joy and amazement. Their humble maintenance worker was revealing himself to be not just a legendary fighter, but a teacher whose classroom happened to be Madison Square Garden's octagon. As the round progressed, Brock's improvement became visible to everyone watching. His stance straightened, his combinations flowed better, his defensive positioning improved dramatically. Jackie's guidance was creating a better fighter in real time. "I can feel it," Brock said with wonder, landing his cleanest combination of the entire evening, not through chemical enhancement, but through proper technique. "This is what real fighting feels like. Now you begin to understand," Jackie replied, his approval genuine despite their ongoing competition. The transformation reached its climax when Brock attempted a technique Jackie had just shown him, a complex counter that required perfect timing and balance. When he executed it correctly, earning respectful applause from the crowd, both fighters paused momentarily. "Thank you," Brock said simply, his voice carrying emotions he'd never experienced in professional competition. But the fight wasn't over, and Jackie's next lesson would be the most important one. As they resumed their contest, the crowd sensed something building, a moment that would define not just the fight's outcome, but its meaning for everyone watching. The master was preparing to deliver his final instruction, and it would be delivered with the kind of technique that made legends immortal. Danny Wong, watching from his hospital bed back in Los Angeles, smiled through his tears as he recognized the setup from their shared past. Some lessons, he knew, could only be taught through perfect execution under impossible pressure. The final round began with both fighters elevated beyond their individual limitations. Jackie by 40 years of disciplined preparation, Brock by rapid learning and genuine respect for his opponent's teaching. The crowd sensed they were witnessing something transcendent, a competition that had evolved into art. Jackie's movement reached its absolute peak as he demonstrated every major martial art in flowing combination. Boxing jabs set up karate strikes, which transitioned into kung fu open-hand techniques, all flowing seamlessly into Muay Thai clinch work. Each technique was executed with textbook precision while serving the larger purpose of continued education. Brock, no longer fighting against Jackie's instruction but learning from it, began showing improvement that amazed even his own corner. His natural athletic ability, freed from chemical enhancement and guided by authentic teaching, revealed itself to be genuinely impressive. "This is what you were meant to be," Jackie said during an exchange, countering Brock's improved technique with a gentle correction that made the younger man's next combination even better. The philosophical dimension of their contest became clear to everyone watching. This wasn't just about proving who was the better fighter. It was about demonstrating what fighting could represent when approached with wisdom instead of as the round progressed. Both men pushed each other to heights neither could have reached alone. Jackie's decades of experience were matched against Brock's natural talent, finally guided by proper instruction. The crowd witnessed something unprecedented, a fight where both participants were becoming better than they'd ever been. "I never knew," Brock said with wonder, landing a technique that combined power with precision in ways his previous training had never achieved. "I never knew fighting could feel like this." But as the round neared its climax, Jackie prepared to deliver his final lesson. Drawing on everything he'd learned from decades of competition, stunt work, and martial arts study, he began a sequence that would become legendary in combat sports history. The combination started with a feint that drew Brock forward, followed by a redirection that used the champion's momentum against him. As Brock stumbled past, Jackie executed a perfect spinning technique that sent his opponent tumbling. Not brutally, but with the kind of technical precision that demonstrated complete mastery. Brock hit the canvas and immediately began to rise, showing the heart of a true warrior. But as he got to his feet, something profound happened. Instead of continuing the attack, Jackie extended his hand to help his opponent up. "A true warrior lifts up his opponent," Jackie said, his words carrying clearly through the suddenly silent arena. Brock took the offered hand, and as he stood, the two fighters embraced in a moment that transcended sport. 20,000 people rose to their feet, understanding they'd witnessed something that would be remembered long after statistics were forgotten. The referee called time, but the real victory had already been achieved. Both fighters had become something greater than they'd been individually. Jackie had proven that true strength comes from character, while Brock had learned that real fighting was about building up rather than tearing down. As they walked to their corners for the final time, the crowd's standing ovation continued unabated. In the community center kids section, Marcus held his poster high while tears of joy streamed down his face. "That's what heroes really look like," he whispered to Rosa, finally understanding why Mr. Jack had always seemed so special. The scorecards were unnecessary. Everyone present knew they'd witnessed something more important than a simple victory. They'd seen what was possible when courage met character under the brightest lights. The official decision was a formality that everyone in Madison Square Garden already knew. When referee Amanda Rodriguez raised Jackie's hand in victory, the arena erupted in a celebration that transcended typical sporting triumph. This was vindication of justice over corruption, wisdom over arrogance, and authentic strength over artificial enhancement. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed over the thunderous applause. "Your winner by technical knockout and unanimous decision, the legendary Jackie Chan." But the real victory was already occurring at the center of the octagon, where Brock knelt before his opponent in a gesture of respect that silenced even the loudest celebrants. The transformation was complete. The arrogant champion had become a humbled student. "I'm sorry," Brock said, his voice breaking with emotion, "for everything I said, everything I did. You showed me what a warrior really looks like, and I want to learn. Will you teach me?" Jackie helped him to his feet with characteristic grace. The student is ready when the teacher appears. But sometimes, the teacher learns as much as the student. The post-fight interview became something unprecedented. In professional sports, instead of typical victory rhetoric, Jackie used his platform to address the larger issues the fight had exposed. "Tonight was never about two men settling a dispute," he said calmly, his battered face showing the cost of his principles. "It was about showing children that heroes can be real, that justice exists, and that true strength comes from character, not chemicals." Brock stood beside him, no longer the swaggering champion, but a man genuinely changed by the experience. "I want to apologize to everyone I disrespected, especially Jackie Chan and all the young people who look up to him. I was wrong about everything, and I want to spend the rest of my career making it right." The legal consequences were swift and comprehensive. Rex Burton and the corrupt officials faced federal charges for drug distribution and bribery. The UFC immediately implemented new testing protocols and oversight procedures. Brock's team was disbanded, their licenses revoked permanently, but the positive changes were even more significant. The fight had generated over $2 million for youth programs nationwide, with additional donations pouring in from inspired viewers around the world. The scandal's exposure led to sweeping reforms in combat sports oversight. Back in Los Angeles, the community center kids watched their hero's victory speech with tears of joy and pride. Their humble Mr. Jack had become the whole world's teacher, proving that anyone could make a difference when they stood up for what was right. "We always knew he was special," Marcus told the news crews that had descended on the center. "He taught us that being strong means protecting people who can't protect themselves." Margaret fielded calls from organizations worldwide wanting to replicate their program. while Eddie found himself with more training requests than he could handle from fighters seeking authentic instruction. Most importantly, Danny Wong watched from his hospital bed with a smile that made his nurses worry about his emotional state. The fight's proceeds would cover not just his treatment, but the experimental procedures that offered his best hope for full recovery. "You magnificent fool," he whispered to the television screen, echoing his words from their last conversation. "You actually did it." The celebration at Madison Square Garden continued long after the official ceremonies ended. Jackie signed autographs for children, posed for pictures with elderly fans who remembered his movies, and answered questions from reporters who struggled to comprehend what they'd witnessed. "What's next for you?" asked a journalist from ESPN. Jackie smiled, looking toward the section where the community center kids were finally being escorted out by security, their voices hoarse from cheering but their spirits soaring. "Tomorrow, I go back to work," he said simply. "There are floors to mop and children to teach. The real work never stops." As the arena slowly emptied, two men who'd entered as enemies walked out as teacher and student, forever changed by a night that proved some victories transcend sport. Entirely. 3 months after Madison Square Garden, the East Side Community Center thrived beyond recognition. Jackie still arrived in work clothes, but now the children proudly called him Seafood Jackie. The facility had tripled in size, serving over 200 kids with proceeds from the historic fight. The most surprising addition was Brock, now Teacher Brock, patiently instructing children in techniques and character. His transformation, from arrogant champion to humble teacher, amazed everyone who witnessed it. "Fighting isn't about hurting others," Brock told young Rosa, adjusting her stance gently. "It's about protecting those who need protection." Danny's cancer treatment progressed successfully while he coordinated volunteers. Margaret managed expansion requests from around the world. The ripple effects of one night's courage continued spreading, proving that authentic character education could transform entire communities. Jackie organized equipment, watching former enemies become teachers, lost children find purpose, and impossible dreams become daily reality through patience, wisdom, and unwavering belief in second chances. 6 months later, the community center bustled with over 200 children whose lives had been transformed. Jackie maintained his routine, morning maintenance, then teaching, while delegations worldwide studied their success model. "Real strength protects those who can't protect themselves," Marcus explained to younger students, now 14 and on. Assistant instructor. During afternoon rounds, Jackie spotted teenage bullies threatening a boy named Jorge near the entrance. The lead bully demanded money while his crew closed in menacingly. Jackie approached quietly, his presence immediately calming the victim. "Perhaps you'd like to learn a better way?" he asked the aggressor gently. Recognition dawned in the bully's eyes. This was the legend from that famous fight. Aggression melted into embarrassment. "Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Jackie continued patiently. "We'll start with respect." The boy shook Jackie's extended hand. "Yeah, okay. Tomorrow." As the group dispersed peacefully, Jackie watched another lost soul begin, finding direction. The cycle continued, courage inspiring transformation, one child at a time. If you liked the story, please watch another story on our channel and subscribe to the channel.